Last Tuesday, I pressed 185 pounds overhead. I am 61 years old. I have not touched a supplement in 14 months. The only thing that changed was a loaf of bread I started baking for 9 cents a serving. 6 months ago, I would have laughed at that sentence. I spent 22 years chasing the answer in powder form. Protein shakes at 6 in the morning. Creatine. BCAAs. I watched my strength drop every single year anyway, and I told myself that was just aging. Here is what I actually found out. The men who built the original Olympics were not eating protein powder. They were eating a specific bread made from 4 cheap ingredients that are sitting in your grocery store right now. One of those ingredients directly slows the enzyme that converts your testosterone into estrogen as you age. Another one targets the exact bottleneck in tendon repair that no protein supplement can reach. I am going to give you the complete recipe at the end of this video with the exact gram measurements that matter. And I want to mention something before we start. This is not going to require expensive equipment, a gym membership, or a single prescription. If you are already over 60 and already feeling the decline, this is specifically for you. Before we get into it, I want to ask you something. What is the cheapest food from your childhood that seemed to keep everyone in your family strong without anyone trying? Leave it in the comments. I read every single one. The first thing I found when I started digging into this was a grain most Americans have never touched: emmer wheat. It is also sold under the name farro or farro grain. It was the primary bread grain of ancient Greek athletic nutrition. Pausanias documented it, Galen prescribed it, and it was eaten not as a side note but as the literal foundation of the competitive diet. I had been buying white flour my entire adult life without understanding what was taken out of it during processing. Emmer contains 15 to 17 grams of protein per 100 grams of dry grain. Modern white flour sits at roughly 9. That gap alone matters. But the protein content is not even the most important difference. When processors mill modern white flour, they strip the bran and germ layers completely. What gets removed with them is the entire magnesium and zinc matrix that makes muscle protein synthesis function. Magnesium alone drives more than 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including ATP production and the translation of amino acids into actual muscle tissue. Zinc is the rate-limiting cofactor for testosterone production in men. Without sufficient zinc, your body cannot complete the hormonal chain that tells your muscles to grow and recover. You can drink protein shakes every day and still lose muscle if your testosterone pathway is broken at that one bottleneck. Here is what surprised me most about emmer. The starch structure is different. Its resistant starch content produces a glycemic response around 40. White bread hits 70 to 85. That difference determines whether amino acids trickle into muscle tissue over 3 hours or spike into your bloodstream and crash in 45 minutes. Researchers at the University of Florence Department of Agricultural, Food, and Environmental Sciences confirmed this in adults over 55. Emmer-based diets produce significantly lower post-meal insulin spikes and much higher satiety scores than equivalent modern wheat servings. The intact grain matrix was identified as the driver of both effects. I switched to emmer flour in my bread 12 weeks before I noticed the difference in my pressing strength. At the time, I assumed it was something else. When I looked back at exactly what had changed in my routine, it was only the bread. But the grain is only part of the equation. Because what I found next stopped me in the middle of my research at 11 at night. Black sesame seeds. Not white sesame. Black. The difference is not cosmetic. The hull of the black variety contains a specific class of antioxidant compounds called lignans. 2 of them, sesamin and sesamolin, have a direct documented effect on collagen cross-linking in tendons and joint cartilage. Here is why that matters specifically for men over 50. Collagen synthesis in your tendons declines by roughly 50% between age 25 and 65. Most men assume the limiting factor is the amino acids that make up collagen. It is not. The actual bottleneck is 2 minerals that activate the enzymes that cross-link collagen fibers into load-bearing structures. Copper activates an enzyme called lysyl oxidase. Manganese activates prolyl hydroxylase. Without both, your tendons cannot rebuild properly, regardless of how much protein you eat. Black sesame seeds contain approximately 1.5 to 2 milligrams of copper and 2.5 milligrams of manganese per 100 grams. That is among the highest dual concentrations of both minerals in any common plant food. Researchers at the Kyoto Prefectural University of Medicine Department of Orthopedics tested sesamin supplementation in adults with knee osteoarthritis over 16 weeks. They observed significant reductions in inflammatory markers and measurable improvements in joint function scores. The practical effect for a man in his 50s or 60s is that the barrier keeping him from training hard enough to build muscle is addressed directly. Pain is not just discomfort. Pain is the actual mechanism through which men stop moving, stop loading their joints, and lose muscle through disuse. A food that reduces that barrier is not a supplement. It is a structural advantage. Grind or crush the seeds before adding them to your bread dough. The lignin compounds are locked inside the hull. Whole seeds pass through without releasing them. I want to pause here for a moment and speak directly to someone specific, because I know exactly who is watching this right now. You are probably somewhere between 58 and 70. You have already lost noticeable muscle. You are maybe on a blood pressure medication or a statin or something else. And you have watched 2 or 3 videos like this one and thought, that might work for someone who is already in decent shape, but I have already waited too long. I am too far gone. I thought exactly that. I was 58 years old, 22 pounds lighter than I was at 40, with knees that ached by 9 in the morning. My doctor told me the decline was normal. He was not wrong about the trajectory. What he was wrong about was the inevitability. The one thing I want you to start tonight before you even bake this bread is this. Eat 1 tablespoon of raw, unfiltered honey before the longest walk you can manage this week. That is it. Under $2. No equipment. The reason will make more sense in 30 seconds. Raw honey was the pre-competition fuel documented by Hippocrates and Pliny the Elder specifically for older competitors. They described it as a food that preserves the strength of men past their prime. That language always struck modern nutritionists as mythology. The biology behind it was only decoded recently. Raw unfiltered honey contains a flavonoid called chrysin. Chrysin is a natural aromatase inhibitor. The aromatase enzyme is responsible for converting your free testosterone into estradiol, which is a form of estrogen. Aromatase activity increases with age and with the accumulation of body fat. As it rises, your testosterone to estrogen ratio shifts in the wrong direction. That shift is a primary driver of sarcopenia, reduced libido, and visceral fat accumulation in men over 55. Chrysin and the wider flavonoid complex in raw honey suppress that conversion at the peripheral tissue level. Researchers at the University of Malaya, Department of Pharmacology, tested 2-along honey supplementation in men over 50 for 12 weeks. They observed clinically significant increases in serum testosterone and significant reductions in estradiol. The chrysin and flavonoid fraction was identified as the primary active component. Commercial pasteurized honey does not deliver this. High heat processing degrades the delicate polyphenols and the enzymatic content that makes raw honey biologically distinct from table sugar. Read the label. It must say raw and unfiltered. That distinction is not marketing. It is the difference between a sweetener and a hormonal intervention. Raw honey also contains oligosaccharide prebiotics that selectively feed beneficial gut bacteria. Current research has linked gut microbiome diversity directly to testosterone production through what is being called the gut gonadal axis. 1 tablespoon in your dough, 1 tablespoon before a walk. That is where I started. Now I want to give you the complete formula. 120 grams of emmer flour, 30 grams of black sesame seeds, ground, 2 tablespoons of raw unfiltered honey, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin cold-pressed olive oil. The olive oil is not in this recipe for flavor. Oleic acid slows gastric emptying and extends the glycemic curve further. The polyphenol oleocanthal in high-quality extra virgin olive oil directly inhibits the same inflammatory enzymes targeted by over-the-counter pain medications at the cellular level without the gastric side effects. That inflammatory suppression at the joint level compounds what the sesamin in black sesame is already doing. Bake at moderate temperature. Do not rush the cooling. This is the step that most people skip, and it is the one that changes the metabolic profile of the bread entirely. When emmer bread cools fully after baking, the cooked starch undergoes a process called retrogradation. It restructures into resistant starch that your body digests far more slowly than when the bread was warm. The slow glucose release is the mechanism behind the 3 to 4 hour amino acid delivery window that makes this bread function as a muscle building tool rather than a simple carbohydrate source. Researchers at the Tufts University Human Nutrition Research Center on Aging found that structured combination meals consumed consistently produced greater 24-hour muscle protein synthesis in adults over 65, compared to any single macronutrient consumed in isolation. The complete matrix is what creates the effect, not one ingredient. The combination, This one loaf delivers approximately 18 grams of highly bioavailable protein, 42 grams of slow-digesting carbohydrate, and 14 grams of monounsaturated fat. No protein bar matches that micronutrient density at 9 cents a serving. I spent 20 years buying things that were engineered to keep me buying. The answer was in the baking aisle the entire time. If you want to see exactly how I work this into my own weekly routine, I put the full step-by-step system together in one place. I call it the Aging Fix Strength System. It is nothing complicated, just the exact steps I wish I had followed 2 decades ago. You can check it out below. Now, I want to hear from you. Are you going to bake this bread this weekend? And have you ever used emmer or raw honey without knowing what they were doing for your testosterone? Tell me in the comments. Leave your answer and your age. I reply personally to every single one. If this opens something up for you, subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next. The next video covers the one mineral that American men over 50 are almost universally deficient in, and why that deficiency is the single fastest way to accelerate muscle loss after 60. You will not find that one on any supplement label. Stay moving. I will see you there.